There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
46% of Americans expect to leave behind financial obligations when they pass away. So it's crucial to make sure your family is financially protected. Policy Genius helps you find the right life insurance coverage by comparing options from America's top insurers with help from licensed, award-winning agents. Secure your financial future with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com to get free life insurance quotes in just a few clicks. That's policygenius.com.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, home of the modern whitetail hunter. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your guest host, Tony Peterson, and today I'm speaking with the one and only Alex Gyllstrom. All right, folks. Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, which is brought to you by First Light. You've probably figured out that this is not the voice of Mark Kenyon. Good old Kenyon actually caught a private jet down to California to spend some time in Silicon Valley. It turns out that Meta, you know, the company that owns Facebook and Instagram, is giving Mark an award for most social media selfies in a single year, at least in the 30 to 39 men's age class category. I think, what's that lizard guy's name? Zuckerberg. I think Zuckerberg's actually presenting the award. So that's, I guess, pretty cool for Mark. And speaking of Mark, a guy who has no doubt faced all kinds of slumps in his life, that's the whole theme behind this podcast with Alex Gyllstrom. We all face bad streaks of whitetail hunting, and it's tough to break the slump and get out of them. So today, Alex, who's a diehard public land hunter and one of the corner office folks over there at Whitetail Properties, he and I are going to talk about the worst streaks we've ever had and how we broke them. I think anyone who hunts whitetails can relate to this episode. And if you can't, keep hunting, and eventually you'll be able to relate. Gilly, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well.
You have a baby, which is your first one that you know about, right?
That I know. That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that baby is due when?
Baby is due February 8th.
Okay. And so not to get too personal here, but I'm going to anyway. Was that timed out around deer hunting, or was that just a happy accident?
A little bit of both. We actually, not without to get into a whole saga of the story here, but we really went through kind of a battle, man. I mean, we had originally we were doing the whole like timing thing, right? So like we were married for about a couple of years, and we're like, okay, now it's like time to want to start a family. I'm not getting any younger, certainly not getting any better looking. So we need to start trying to get these kids going, right? And so we went the whole thing. We got pregnant fairly quickly, and then had a miscarriage. So it was like, okay, well, shoot, like what's that going to do? So went through that whole thing, and then it was like, all right, we're going to start trying again, and then like could not get pregnant for like almost 2 years. Oof. So it reached the point where at first we were definitely on the track of like, okay, let's be smart about this. Let's really time this. And then it reached a point of like, okay, we just got to do whatever we can do to make it happen. So like went through like the whole infertility thing and everything ended up checking out okay and got the right help. And and all things considered, we were pretty lucky, which meaning it took little guidance or help for us to actually conceive and make it happen. So that was great. But all that aside, it ended up working out perfectly from a timing standpoint.
So this is going to be a terrible analogy, but I'm going to say it anyway. So you started out and you're like the diehard pheasant hunter with a pointer, and you've got the nice over under, and you're like only perfect points, perfect flushes. I'm only taking the right shot, and then it's a whiff, and then you lose one in the grass, and you lose one in the cattails, and pretty soon you've got the semi-auto with 5 shells, and you're shooting them out of the car window.
Yeah. And were you like, I think that was a rooster, right? And it's like, yeah, I was definitely there. Yeah.
You're Googling the game farms closest to your house so you can go shoot some planted birds just to feel better.
Exactly. Yeah. Who's running plant discount or planted bird discounts and stuff like that? We were on that version of of having a baby. So,
well, I'm so happy for you, man.
Thank you.
You got lucky. You know, I had a vastly different experience. We got pregnant instantly, like barely any trying whatsoever. And it was like, I'm like, it's got to be right after deer season and as far before turkey season as it could possibly be. And I mean, I nailed it. It was perfect. And then except instead of one baby, we had 2, and twins always come early. Yeah. So I was literally buying groceries to go muzzleloader hunting because I'm like, I got 6 weeks left before these kids are coming. And my wife called me and she's like, my water broke. And I was like, I hate to admit this, so I'm going to anyway. I thought then, I'm like, this is going to screw up my muzzleloader hunting for the rest of my life. And it literally has.
Yep. I get it, dude. I totally understand. Where it's like you hear stories from buddies where it's like, oh, you know, and you like see, and they turn it into a positive, right? But like these kids that are born during November, and it's like, oh, I get to hunt with my kids, and their birth, you know, they get to hunt a birthday buck and all this and that, and I'm like, that sounds great, but what does it take, like a dozen years before it gets cool? Like, I mean, that does not sound fun. Like,
yeah, I mean, you can hunt with your kid when they're born anytime. Like, no, I know. I mean, you gotta look for the silver lining on that stuff. Of course. I'm curious with you. You and I, we've known each other a long time. We did a thing for North American Whitetail for a couple of years called Project Public, where we hunted a bunch of public land, and so we've been, you know, we've kind of flown in the same circle for a long time. You do a lot of public land stuff, and you know, when we were going to have the girls, everybody's like, oh, you're not going to have any more time to hunt. Like, you're going to be, and I'm like, well, you know, it's my job and I'm going to do this. Like, I wasn't that worried about it. But what I was worried about was going from essentially not unlimited time, but like real time. If I got a tag somewhere, I'm like, I can give this 8 or 10 days, which is a lot of time. And then, you know, to be in, okay, you got 3 days, 4 days, whatever. And I was worried that it was like, I'm going to hit a bunch of these streaks where I'm just not going to be able to make it happen. And it actually made me super focused. And I went on a tear for several years after we had the girls, because it was like, you only have X amount of time and you better get real efficient with it. And so I'm curious to see how this shakes out for you. Because I think, you know, and I think I talked to Annie Mae about this too one time. Like, I think for some people, it's like a major driver to like get your shit together, and like, you don't have time to waste anymore.
For me, and you're totally agree. So efficiency has always been a huge focus for me for a number of reasons. Like, obviously super lucky to have a career in the outdoor industry, but like, I'll say, like, I write a lot of stuff with you. Like, we do a lot of content stuff too, but like, I have a day job, right? Thankfully it's in the outdoor industry, which is fantastic, but there's still, like, everybody thinks, like, we joke about it all the time in the hunting industry. It's like, I should have, like, it was like, man, if I wanted to hunt all the time, I should have gotten to the fishing industry, not the other way around. So it's kind of real. Like, you know, people think we just get to hunt all the time. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. We do get to hunt a lot, and it's awesome. But there's still responsibilities and priorities and things like that when you're, you know, managing teams and multiple people, and you've got things to do. So efficiency is super important. I got married, like, that enters a whole new realm of responsibility and priorities. And I want to be there and spend time with my wife. And I want to, you know, have that presence. So efficiency has always been a huge focus of mine. And just like you, I mean, I love to go a lot of different places and do a lot of hunts. There's only so much time. So I talk about and write about this a lot. And I call it like hunting with a 3-day mindset. And so regardless of where you are, how much time you have, it's like, what if you only had 3 days to get it done? And so I really, and now more importantly, I'm hoping that philosophy and kind of my approach from that standpoint has led me to be able to kind of continue that and probably even ramp it up even more so once baby gets here and the kids start going. I mean, by no means, it's like, I always, talk like Andy May, man, you said it. It's like, it's so amazing how efficient that guy actually is and continues to get it done so consistently. I'm not on that level. I don't pretend to, I'm like the last 10 minutes of daylight on the final day of wherever I'm going to be. Like, that's when I kill. And then I've got to figure out, okay, I need more time tomorrow to process the deer, cape them out, do whatever I'm going to do, because this always happens that way. But efficiency, to your point, efficiency is a major driver behind, what I do, just because there's so many other things going on. And as much as I would just like, I'm going to dedicate, I'm going to be in this state or in this place, however long it takes. And that's what I'm here to do. And it never seems to work out that way, but definitely, I'm not oblivious to the fact that efficiency is going to be a major, major priority moving forward, for sure.
Well, and I think that, you've done this a lot. I've done this a lot, where we just encourage people to go travel and try these hunts, because you really find out a lot about yourself. And I think what bites a lot of hunters in the ass is if you're the kind of guy who's like, I've got my grandma's farm or this lease or whatever, and I hunt in state, I can only afford to do this, or I don't have the desire to travel. You can kind of get complacent with that. And I think a lot of people go, I could hunt September, or I could hunt early October, but I'm going to wait for the rut and I'll get it done then. And then you go to when you should be able to get it done and the weather sucks and it's 75 degrees or, whatever, things conspire against you and it just doesn't happen. And now you look back and you go, man, I had an awful lot of opportunities. I could have hunted earlier and didn't. And now you're in that late season situation where your tag's not filled and it's just a different ball game. And when you go do those, if you travel out of state one time and you're like, I've got 5 days and I got this expensive non-resident tag to make the most of, it changes how you focus. And I know you do this a lot. Like when I travel, it doesn't matter where I go. I'm always bringing home something with me where I'm like, I can use that in Minnesota or where in Wisconsin, where I hunt a lot, where I should have more time. And I think those lessons are so important.
You learn, yes, 100%. I mean, I've learned, it has essentially taught me how to hunt. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I grew up hunting permission properties in Southwest Michigan and everything like that with my dad and family and stuff. And you cut your teeth and you learn like really big, like maybe pillar-esque like values and like, okay, I need to play the wind because the core concepts or strategies behind hunting, you can learn that stuff and obviously continue to learn if your perspective's right. You can certainly learn, tons and tons and tons on private land, but public hunting, like you said, from the efficiency standpoint, limited time to get it done, and just learning new terrain and different habitats. I mean, that is what has sculpted like my knowledge base of hunting and how to do it, how to get it done on whitetails. And I mean, you never know what the future holds. And I know you, with the girls getting older and everything, that you've certainly spent more time than you had in the past on private land, like at your farm or whatever, of just, being able to enjoy that time with your family and do that more. And I'm sure that's in my future as well. But I can't imagine a scenario where I'm never gonna not hunt public land, simply from the standpoint of my hunting isn't I want to kill the big, of course I like killing big mature deer. I love that chess match with a old wily buck, but it's such a passion for knowledge and just try to advance myself, my skills, be the best hunter I can be, learn about deer as much as I possibly can, and I just don't think there's any better way to do that than limited time on public land. It is the ultimate teacher. I mean, it will build you up and tear you down faster than anything.
Yeah. And it is weird. I mean, I'm the last 2 years I've spent probably almost as much time hunting with my daughters as I have just for myself. And I have been on private land with them. And it's like, I find myself loving, I can go out and brush in a blind and that sucker's going to stay there, I can really set the stage, but it actually makes me like really crave that, show up at a new chunk of public land somewhere and figure it out. And I kind of feel I like personally, I've just been in like this sort of weird spot with the meat eater gig and, you know, having to film more and save some tags and stuff where I'm like, I haven't found that balance yet. And I feel like after this year, I'm like, I got this like lined out. Like I know how I'm going to have to do this to still love it, because you know how it is. Like you can slip into like a danger zone pretty quick when it's like too much of your job or too much pressure. And I don't know about you, but for me, if I start putting a lot of pressure on myself, like let's say, you know, I go to a couple states and I don't fill a tag, or, you know, like I just don't have that hunt that like fulfills me, or I don't kill one at home, and I start getting toward the end of the year, I start really putting pressure on myself. And that's when I will just flame out. Like I make bad decisions.
You're spot on. I mean, I can totally relate to that. My last like banger year, I would say, was 2019, I think. And I killed, I think I killed 3 bucks and had really good. I mean, just saw. I felt like I saw a deer. I would shoot like I shoot almost like every time I hit the woods. Like it was crazy, right? And it's been. I mean, honestly, every season since then, the last 3 years have been a grind. So, ironically, to your point, this year I drew an Iowa tag, which obviously, as you know, is like something everybody looks forward to. We carve out a bunch of time, and I had some buddies that, long story short, I actually had some access to some pretty good private ground in Iowa this year, which is never, I mean, that has not happened before. So I was like, even though I love spending so much time on public land, I've been doing that so much the last, forever. I was kind of like secretly like loving it. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get to like, there's gonna be food sources and there's gonna be like even food plots, and I'm gonna get to set that, like, this is gonna be awesome. Like and I love the dynamic of that. And I've every year I always help buddies plant food plots and set some farms up and stuff for them that I don't hunt, but I just enjoy doing it and being out there and stuff like that. So I mean, I've got a knowledge base of it, but just not getting to enjoy it a lot myself. And the craziest thing, man, like actually, and it was a phenomenal, like, I broke it up into a couple different segments of 4-day periods where I hunted on that private ground in Iowa, and it actually caused me, and it was only, like I said, a handful of days, and I did love it, but it actually caused me to miss and even just being on public land. Like I just enjoy, like, where I wasn't hanging and hunting and doing my thing and scouting just constantly. Like it wasn't so much of that. So in a weird way, like it was super fun to kind of try something different and something that was a little bit unique to the way I'd been hunting for the last, so many years, but it was a cool thing. So I'm kind of not necessarily in the same boat as you yet, but on the same track. I'm on the same path as you, I feel like, where it's something I want to do. I want to continue to understand managing land and doing some more, interesting things like that with private land. But I just gotta determine where that balance is for myself.
Yep. That buck you killed down there is freaking sweet, man.
Thanks, dude.
That is a cool deer.
It was a fun one. Yeah, it was such a weird thing, honestly. Like, I don't know how much you want to get into it, but just like, I don't know about you, but like there is, obviously an encounter can take anywhere from like multiple minutes anywhere to like seconds, right? And like I have internal conversations with myself throughout that entire situation. So like with this buck, I spotted him, I don't know, he was like 60 yards, 70 yards away and some thick stuff kind of just bumping does. And all I could see was like his body. And I was like, absolutely, I was like, that's a mature buck, no doubt. Like he's a monster, like body wise. I couldn't really see his head. And I'm starting to have this back and forth, like, okay, should I call to him? I'm like asking myself and answering these questions internally. I feel like we all do, right? And so I ended up calling to him a little bit, and he starts coming my way, but it's still thick. And then finally, he kind of steps out into the opening a little bit, and he's probably like 50 yards or so. And I can tell it's a deer that my buddies had trail camera pictures of for years. They called him the Big Seven. It was just this ancient, old, big, gnarly 7-point. And long story short, he snort wheezes and like just does the whole thing. And he's lip curling and just being awesome. And I'm like, there's this big deep ditch between the two of us. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. And I started just having these thoughts, and I was like, man, it's like my Iowa tag, and I waited so long to have it. And I know there's good deer around, and there's some other stuff I can hunt. And it's like, I don't know. And I'm just sitting there like, do I want to shoot this ancient, big, old, gnarly buck? And I'm like, actually like having this debate in my head. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to shoot him. I don't know. I have my bow, and I was like, man, and maybe if he crosses this ditch and like comes up on this other side, I mean, it's like an 8-foot deep ditch. So I was like, if he crosses that and comes up on my side, he's like 15 to 18 yards depending, and he'd be right there. And so he starts kind of doing his thing, and he rubs a tree a little bit, and I can just see his frame, like this big old gnarly 7-point frame just going on. And I was like, I'm having this debate. And eventually I'm like, I asked myself, and I just like, everything stopped in my head. And I just said, like, dude, who do you think you are? Like, I'm like, I almost audibly said it. Like, I almost audibly said it because I got so frustrated with myself. I'm like, I said, this big, ancient, mature deer, 6, 7, 8 years old, he's way over 5 and just big and awesome. And I'm like, who do you think you are, man? Like, you're kidding me. Like, you just publicly in hunter, from Southwest Michigan, all of a sudden you're in Iowa and this big, massive buck is standing in front of you and you're debating if he's good enough for you to shoot. I got almost mad at myself. I was like, I'm hammering this thing. And sure enough, he finally broke, came down this ditch, came out the other side, and I, shot him at 18. He ran 40 and tipped over. I mean, it was, and then finally, to go ahead and get my hands on him and see what he actually was, just from being a freak kind of cool deer. I was so like, there was no negative feelings at all, other than the fact that I was disappointed in myself from being one of those, like, I was kind of being a prick about it. Right. Like I was so mad at myself.
Yeah. That's really hard for me to relate to. 'Cause when I see a buck like that, I don't have any, like, I'm never like, should I, or should I not? I'm always like, yeah, I want to kill that.
And it's uncharacteristic for me too. Like I never usually have that feeling, and I had it. And I was like, what is wrong? Like, I don't. So anyway, I'm super happy that I got over my douchiness for about 5 minutes, and I shot this thing, and it ended up happening the way it happened, because I couldn't. And then I'm like sitting there thinking, like, oh my gosh, like how many 8 and 10 points have you shot or will you shoot, in your lifetime? It's like, I may never even see a deer like that again. Yeah. So yeah, super, super pumped about it. It was an awesome trip. And yeah, I was really glad it all came together finally after it's been a grind, dude. Like you said, it has been a grind up to that point. So it was awesome to finally punch a tag.
So let's talk about that. What's the worst slump you've ever had for whitetails? You got one that sticks out one season?
Yeah.
Are there so many that you can't choose them?
Honestly, kind of, yeah. Believe it or not, man, like I would probably say, and I'm not even categorizing it necessarily from a standpoint of like filling a tag. I would say probably this year, dude. Like in all seriousness, like in recent memory. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I killed a great buck in Iowa, and I'm super happy with that. And I've still got some time left, and some things I'm gonna try to hunt in Illinois. Some of public stuff I got around here that I've scouted a lot, but it has been like to even see a buck I would shoot, my goal, just without getting into it, like whenever I'm on my trip, right? Like if I'm going on a trip, I'm like, here's 5 days here, here's 3 to 7 days on a trip somewhere. My main goal most of the time is to shoot a good representation of that area. That's kind of my scale, my measuring stick. And so, I know you hunt the Dakotas a lot. I do too. Like South Dakota is one of my favorite places in the world. And I've been going out there and hunting, a few different areas of a larger region for years and years and years. And this was the first year I did not, and you can point to a million different things. The weather was crappy. It was like 80 degrees 4 days in a row. And like and believe it or not, like when I was there in South Dakota, it was like, there was 3 consecutive days where the wind speed did not get over 7 miles an hour, which is, I'm like, this is unbelievable. Like I just can't even wrap my mind around it. And I did not, long story short, I was there 6 days. I was there 6 days, did not see a buck that I would shoot while hunting. And that had never happened to me in almost a decade of doing that. And then even here in Illinois, like I said, I haven't spent a lot of time here in Illinois yet because I have that Iowa tag and I was wanting to dedicate most of my season to that. But in probably 9 hunts here in Illinois, in Western Illinois where I live, I've yet to see a deer that I would shoot. So that's been really tough. So
what do you do? Do you just stick to your guns and say it's still a buck that's a good representation of the area, or do you ever just go, you know what, I'm gonna make my decision when he starts walking down the trail, or do you try to shoot a doe, or what do you do? How do you break that slump?
So I try, yeah. With does are always a question mark for me because I love shooting them so much and I love eating them. So it's always I know with a doe, I never really know. I just kind of let them. Whatever's going to happen in that moment. I'm going to let whatever happens in that moment happen because I love eating venison and that's what we live off of like 99% of the time. So I don't really know with those, but with bucks, it's like I scout so much. Like I know you do, like so many of us and kind of this circle, like we scout so much. And I truly believe that is the secret to success, especially when you're on public land, that I'm not going to be hunting areas where I'm going to be hunting areas where I know that they're there, or there's strong likelihood of the possibility they're there, or at some point in the season, whether they're there or not, or whether they've been killed or not, there's a good buck or bucks on this property. So I stick to that, where it's a good representation of whatever that property could yield. And then I have that mentality. But I think, again, what the public land education has really instilled in me is like, it's not, I think there's something to be said for the fact during the rut of like, okay, you've got your, like we talk about like rut circuits for bucks, right? Where they've got like this circuit of like cruising that they'll do, or chasing or scouting does and locking does down, breeding does, etc. But like, I think there's something to be said for a hunter to have that as well, where he's got like, okay, I'm going to have these in this region or this section of this property. I've got my, however many 4 or 5, and I'm going to just rotate around for the first week or two of November. And I'm going to get an opportunity, right? Like I think there's something to be said for that. I'm not quite wired that way. Like and hunting public land has instilled this in me, and it's just worked for me. Mobility is best. If it's, again, I might throw a couple of sits, maybe a couple of days at a spot. But if it's not happening, then I'm moving. I just got to keep going and finding the freshest stuff I possibly can. And I've been doing that. So that is kind of my methodology, is maintain the thought process on a good representation of that area, and be as mobile as I can to find that good representation of that area for that buck. And I do run some trail cameras on public and have some, kind of, I don't know if you can call it, have tabs on them, but like I've got a little bit of, okay, this buck has been, fairly consistent in this area, and this, I might run into them here or whatever. But, and then obviously that's kind of without hunting pressure, right? That's always the the golden rule as far as determining what you're going to do. But, so that's kind of my mentality. And I'm not worried. I think the other thing about the standard thing, right, is like how I'm going to lower or keep standards is, it's more about the experience, the chase, the hunt, things like that, than just like shooting the absolute biggest thing for me. And it's a lot about meat, man. Like I said, we really rely on venison. I love shooting does and eating them. So I'm not worried about eating a buck tag, because I'm going to have doe. I'm going to shoot does, and I'm going to have that too. So a good representation of the area for a buck is kind of it's my pretty steadfast rule for myself.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver, off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co, and make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
So let's say you go out there in Illinois and you're like, I should be able to find one, and you can't. Like, it's just kicking your ass. It's 8, 10, 12 sits in a row, whatever. Do you ever, barring having some kind of sweet tag, like an Iowa tag in your pocket, do you ever just shake it up and go hunt someplace totally new, just go try something different? And just because I find myself, some of the worst slumps I've had have been when I really focus on the big woods, like in Wisconsin. Yeah. But I like it. I like the challenge of it, but I also like it because it's like, you're not going to go there and target 160s. You know what I mean? Like it's not like, it's not like a slump in Iowa, so you're like to have lower standards, or to just to be like, I mean, one of the slumps that I like sticks with me so bad was, I think it was like 2017, 2018, somewhere in there. I was spending a lot of time over there in northern Wisconsin, and I was like, I got a doe tag and I got a buck tag. I want to kill a doe and I want to kill a buck. Yeah. And I could not get a deer to stick around in shooting range, does, bucks, anything. And it took me like 3 weeks. And I didn't hunt every day because I don't live there, but like 3 weeks of getting my ass handed to me by just mature does in the big woods before I finally shot one. And I've had all kinds of streaky hunting in my life, but killing that one doe on public land there when I had just been getting smoked for 3 weeks was like such a boost for me. Like, and we talk about this, we kind of like, go kill does, like go shoot them on a food plot or go do whatever. And I'm like, okay, like you're talking about a deer that might be as mature as any buck you'd ever pick your bow up for. Right. And you don't give them any credit whatsoever. And then you go into a situation like that, and it's so like easy in the industry to sort of gloss over that fact and just be like, oh, just go fill the freezer. Just, like it's hard for you to go kill a 2.5-year-old buck. I'm like, well, where are you hunting? Right. You got to factor that into, like, if you're in a slump, like how hard should it be versus like how hard is it?
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. And I think when I say things like good representation of that area, I mean, that can vary even depending on a given county or region of a state that you're in. I mean, it might be based on what even public track you're on and how difficult, the opportunities are that are there. I mean, you've got to be able to adjust and shoot whatever's going to make you happy. And I think the big thing for me is, like, even if I just, like, this year has been super, super challenging just to find and see them, like I said, outside Iowa, where I just keep moving. I mean, that's the big thing is because I don't know what else to do, I guess, at the end of the day is like, I got to keep the faith that I'm going to find them eventually. And either the season's going to end, I'm going to run out of time, or I'll catch up to them. And that's, I mean, it's, without oversimplifying it, that's kind of how I approach it mentally.
Yeah. But there's a good lesson there, right? Because you've, and I talk about this with Zach Fehrenbaugh a lot. Like, Zach loves to just run them down on the ground. Like, that's his thing, and he's really good at it, and he found his lane, and that's like just his style. And a guy like you, a guy like Andy is like scout, get mobile, get on them, get on the fresh sign. And I was muzzleloader hunting with a buddy of mine in southeastern Minnesota a little bit ago, and we were sitting there and had a busted up. I think he was probably a 2-year-old. He was all busted up, and he was walking out into this field, and then there was a bigger buck probably like a 100, 110, whatever. I was going to shoot either one of them if they got within range. And they would both walk down into this draw in this cornfield, and we were running out of light. And I looked at him. I'm like, should I belly crawl out here and see, because if I got to the edge, I'm like, they're going to be within range and there's going to be an opportunity. So whichever one is there. And he's like, yeah, make something happen. And in my head, I'm like, you always screw these up. Like you've lost sight of them, even though I'm sitting there with a scoped gun. Like I haven't killed a deer with a gun in 7-8 years,
yeah.
As I'm crawling across that chisel plowed cornfield and I've lost sight of both of these deer, I'm like focused on the smaller buck because he was the second one to go in. So I'm like, I know better where he is. And I'm crawling up there and, it's that situation where you're like, I should be able to see him. It's a chisel plowed cornfield and I can't freaking see him. And you crawl a little and peek more. And then I looked over and that bigger buck's standing there like 80 yards away looking at me because he swung around and blew out of there. And it was super fun. But I told my buddy on the way back, I'm like, my lane is just figure out where deer like to walk and wait for them. Because when I do this shit, like you know how it is. Like sometimes you kill them sneaking up on them, and you go out and spot and stalk, whatever. But for the most part, when you get enough years behind you in the rearview mirror, you're like, I know what I have to do to break this slump. I know what I have to do to fill this tag. And man, it's fun to kind of try the new stuff, but when you have things like that, you're just like, I was like just so reminded of so many times I've tried something like that and it just never works.
I've found myself as time has gone on more and more, and especially hunting more and more public land with variations of pressure, hunting from the ground more. I'm doing it a lot more, but I totally agree with the stalk thing. It's patience for me, man. I really struggle being patient enough. And I think it's a combination of wanting to make it happen really bad, not being okay with the fact that if it doesn't happen, or being okay with myself if I screw it up. I think there's variations of that, and just not having enough experience doing it enough, right? So there's been times where I've slipped in on bucks, where they're locked down with a doe or something that's, varying circumstances that just have them distracted. But like in terms of like buck, just feeding, or like in terms of them just cruising and trying to cut them off and get in front of them or do whatever, I'm right there with you, man. I have struggled great. It has not gone well. Like anytime. I mean, it's just like, holy cow. And I respect it greatly. I think it's an incredible skill, and it's something that I think I wish I was better at, and would like to eventually maybe get better at. But like, I'm with you. Like, I'm perfectly content hunting off the ground, being in the right spot in the right situation. But it's kind of more of like how can I identify or find my best ambush point to cut them off, get in front of them, intercept them, whatever it might be. But yeah, the whole stalking in on them is it's a different thing, man. Different thing.
I honestly think impatience probably saves more bucks than anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
for sure.
It is so, and this is why I wanted to do this episode with you is, you start out the season, you got X amount of tags, whether you got one at home or 15 on the road or whatever. And you're like, this is my goal here. This is my goal there. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then the real world hits and you go, okay, I kind of have to adapt to this stuff and start figuring it out. But when you start getting in that desperation mode, that's when you're like, I'm not going to do what I'm great at or I'm getting good at, and I'm going to go try this new thing. And you start blowing deer out and it starts to spiral. And you just like, for me, I feel like I get like really streaky. If I'm on a bad streak, like I make shitty decisions and it just gets worse. And I literally have to like start over somehow, and you know how it is. Like sometimes you go on a tear and it's like, you're just in the zone and you knock out like 3 states in a row and you're like, I'm king of the world, and it's always going to level off. I mean, I know you're a huge baseball fan, right?
Yep.
Did you watch the Nolan Ryan documentary on Netflix?
I did.
Very
good.
How badass is that, right?
So good.
I mean, I grew up loving baseball and, paying attention to it and whatever, but I had no concept of how dominant he was.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal.
It's anybody, even if you're not really interested in sports, it's pretty freaking incredible. But you watch Nolan Ryan's career and, all-time most strikeouts out of any pitcher ever. I mean, like, his stats, like his records are freaking bananas.
Yeah.
And, he starts out and he's getting his ass handed to him and he's a reliever the first couple years. And then he goes through these stages where he's like so unbelievably dominant that the best hitters of the time can't touch him. And then he had times where he was getting shelled and people are like, Nolan Ryan's past his prime. Like it's over. And then he'd come back and figure something out. And I look at that and I go, geez, if you're out there and you've been whitetail hunting 5 years or 10 years, or, a lot of people who really hit a slump are at that stage where they go, I kind of got the little bucks and the does figured out, but I want that Pope and Young buck and they cannot make it happen. Like you got to think about the most talented professional athletes in the world at their craft that they've devoted everything to and they get paid crazy money for, have seasons where they suck. Like that's crazy.
It's the reality of it. And I think part of it too is just maintaining that mentality that of positivity. It's not second guessing what the foundational rules of whatever it is. You're talking bow hunting, deer hunting, baseball, whatever it might be, but just maintaining that positive outlook and mentality that I know what I'm doing. I know I need to make some adjustments, but I need to stay the course and just stay consistently and stay at it, and not give up. And I think it's all about that balance point, right? Where I'm like you, where you go into these slumps or you go into these hard, it's really easy for me to push really hard in moments like that, where it's like, I'm going to force this situation into a positive outcome. And that just, it rarely ever happens, because then what happens is, you're finally hanging this setup and it's like, okay, I'm not even getting where I want to be. And I just dropped a climbing stick and I just clanked off the other one, and you get up and you finally get it. You get your saddle platform hung or your stand hung or whatever. And you're just like this, and it's the wind switches with an hour left and you're like, okay, this is just perfect. And then all of a sudden you look up and the deer's coming in and he walks to 20 yards and you shoot him. That's how it happens a lot of times. And it's like, why do I do this to myself where I'm just so mentally just grinding and grinding, almost to the point of like you said earlier, of making it not fun and over forcing it instead of just and again, I think it's just riding the wave, because you can't just totally, in my opinion, you can't just totally sit back and just, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. No, you have to buckle down in the right times and really be serious and stay focused. But you can't just where you're trying to steer the ship so intensely that you just blow up you're hurting yourself. And I consistently every year get to a point where I do that, where I end up hurting myself and just totally get way intense and everything. And a lot of times it's, my wife or a couple buddies or whatever, and they'll be like, what are you doing? Stop. You're not fun to be around. You're not fun to talk to about this thing. And it's you just kind of got to have that gut check or that reality check of man, you know what you're doing. Just stay the course and kind of ride the wave. But I think back to what you're saying about Nolan Ryan and just all of that, I think so much of that comes back to perspective and mental state of just being confident in your ability. Yes. But also just staying super positive and not letting the moments or the mishaps or anything like that be bigger than the overall mission and goal at hand of what you're actually doing out there.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever just take some time off? Because when I get to that stage where nobody wants to be around me, which I hit it just about every deer season too. I'm in it right now. Bad.
Yeah.
Bad. Do you ever just take time off and do something else?
Yeah. Yes and no. That's usually when I will, I don't know, kind of, I should say. So when I get into those moments and those attitudes like that, a lot of times I'll go to a spot, either I haven't scouted very much, I haven't hunted very much, or maybe I haven't even boots on the ground scouted or been to physically at all. And I'll just go and just learn something new. I'll just I have no idea what's here. I've no experiences here. I have nothing I can glean. I'm just going to try and take my mind off of the fact of actually killing a deer. And I want to go see if I can find something new and do that. And it's with no pressure, right? It's I've never been to this, piece of public, or I've never been over here. I just want to go and scout and find sign and try to even if it's something I've done it a couple of times in the past. And maybe actually we're talking about this. I'm thinking maybe I should need to be doing this now. Right. Maybe I want to hang this up and go scout something else. But, is even filing something away for future seasons. Like it might be like, and now we're kind of past the rut, right? So it's like you kind of look and maybe I'm finding a bunch of rut sign where there's just this whole area is torn up with rubs and maybe even there's some scrapes and stuff like that. And there's, you know, it looks like maybe there's doe bedding up here, whatever it might be. And I'm like, holy cow, I need to like log this away for next year or something. I mean, I've found distracting myself from the fact that I haven't filled a tag or I haven't killed a buck or whatever, this year by doing stuff like that, where it's still, I feel like it's still benefiting or valuable to my hunting. I'm still like spending quality time doing something productive, but maybe it is like you said, there's in situations like that, at least for me personally, I don't feel any pressure in that moment. I'm just trying to gather information, have fun out there doing it. And, you know, it's not really any time spent, you know, really focused on the intensity of filling a tag.
Yeah. I think you know, for me, I'm lucky because I have some other stuff I like to do in the woods. You know, I do a lot of pheasant hunting and whatever else, you know, and I find a similar kind of like a little bit of a release on the pressure valve to just be like, I'm not going to go deer hunting this weekend. I'm going to go pheasant hunting. And you always find something out there that's interesting, or you just like, it just sort of takes the edge off a little bit. And, you know, there's something we don't really talk about in the hunting industry hardly ever. We always kind of paint this rosy picture of this stuff, right? Like, oh, it's the best thing ever and it's so fun. I can't wait and I live for it and blah, blah, blah. Except when you're actually hunting a lot of it sucks. A lot of it's really stressful. And a lot of it's just not that much fun sometimes. And, you know, you're talking about dropping stuff out of a tree and just like having a bad attitude or whatever. When we were filming 1 week in November this year, I started the first couple days on public land in southwestern Minnesota, and it was rough. And we had one sit where we went in and, you know, you've got a cameraman with you, and we were dropping, like, I got up into the tree, I dropped my grunt tube, I dropped my phone. So I went back down and got him. As I'm down there, the GoPro lands on my head that he dropped. So I picked that up. I go back up there. I drop my grunt tube down again. I'm like, I'm not going to need it anyway because I'm not going to see a freaking buck. And then he's like talking, and we're in this little tree because there aren't that many trees there. And he like makes this gesture and knocks my arrow off my rest onto the ground. And it's just pure yard sale down there. And I'm just like, and that was the sit where I had scouted this river bottom spot, and it looked freaking banging. In fact, I pheasant hunted it recently and jumped 2 good bucks out of there. So I know I was in the neighborhood. I just didn't have the right spot or time or whatever. But we'd walked in there, and 2 days before I'd been there, there's one banging trail that follows the river edge, you know, kind of parallels it and cuts the bends off, you know, just like dreamy rut stuff. You got the water behind you, so the wind's perfect, all that stuff.
Funnels them down.
Yeah, dude, it's just like my favorite, like on paper, that's like my river bottom stuff like that. Ugh, I love it. But we get in there, and I like walk up to the tree to start hanging our set, and I look over, and there's a dead buck laying on the trail. You know, and you're just like, somebody gut shot it between, you know, the 2 days before when I had scouted it. Now it was super fresh, and it's laying dead in the middle of the trail we're hunting. And you're just like, what are the freaking odds? And, you know, and then we climb up, and I drop everything I own onto the ground, and my cameraman drops all of his shit. And you're just like, sometimes, you know, in that situation, we can't just bow out and go chase pheasants, although I wanted to. But sometimes you're just like, you got some bad mojo, man, and you just gotta back out and do something else.
Yeah. Well, plus, and you're such a dog freak, and I feel like you're entering a point where you're deer hunting just to get you to pheasant season, and then you can pheasant hunt.
You know what? I'll tell you what. So, because you mentioned this early when you said you're not wired to just like, you got to find new stuff and you got to hunt new ground. I'm the same way. Like, I'm jealous of people who like can have one spot and just like that's their season. They're like, you know, target bucks or whatever. Like, I just can't. It doesn't do anything for me. And I figured this out. I think I got lucky when I was like in college and I was fishing a bunch of tournaments and I burned myself to the ground. I was like, I hate fishing now. Too far. I went too far.
Yeah.
And I needed something else. So then I was like, I got to freaking bow hunt. Like, I got to get into a tree and decompress because I'm sick of, you know, driving all over and hauling the boat and all that BS. And what it really taught me was like, if I go too hard in the paint with anything, and that's like my nature, I need the backup stuff. And so the dog thing, that's just like, for me, that's just like pure fun. Like, I just, you know, there's not the trophy BS, and there's not like this stuff that we have going on with the whitetail world. And it's like, you just got to find it. Like if you're hitting a spot with your deer hunting where you're like, I don't like this right now. Like, I don't want to do it. I want to do something else. Man, you probably need some kind of backup outlet somewhere.
So you're telling me you don't measure your pheasant spurs and the wingspan and compare them to your buddies, or how you shoot bigger pheasants?
No, I mean, and we're such idiots, right? Like, I think one of the worst things that happened to us is this trophy hunting craze.
I agree.
I just look at it. I'm like, there's so much bad that comes with it, but it's like, it's a dumb thing to bitch about. A, because I've been a part of it for a long time, so it makes me a huge hypocrite. But B, it's not going away. Like, it's just going to be a part of us no matter what. And so, like, the pheasant thing, yeah, there's no trophy pheasants. But if you're out there hunting with 3 of your buddies and you kill more birds than they do, like, you're still going to talk shit at the end of the night, And I was like, I sometimes fantasize about a world where deer just don't have antlers, where all we can hunt are just antlerless deer. They all are the same. But we'd still have like heaviest doe contests, and you know what I mean? Like, we would never get away from, like, there would always be trophies in there somehow.
I know, because I've thought about the same. So like, I've had this thought so many times. So like, exactly what we're talking about, like in a tree thinking, and it's just like, what if, right? And I'm like sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, what if like bucks were actually doe, like had the, like this, the maybe like the, the societal impact, like implications of like what bucks are. What if does and bucks were flip-flopped, right? So it's like, what if does all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, she's got the longest ears, and like, and then like I'm going through this thing of like, what if does like had that impact that bucks have, like in our industry? But and then I found myself thinking exactly what you just said. It's like, wait a second, you just totally like ruined it, because you're already thinking of ways to prioritize one doe over another doe. And it's like, no, man, like that's not it. I mean, it is, man. It is such a, I hate it. And dude, I don't know. I mean, the social media thing, dude, I know it's part of what we do, and we have to do it for our jobs. And there's definitely positives to it and like ways to connect and interact as a community, but I really hate social media.
I do too, so much, but it's not like, I would guess a lot of people who listen to this podcast probably didn't, they probably weren't like at the age where they were like hardcore whitetail hunters reading magazines 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And I remember the same shit, when I was an editor at Peterson's Bow Hunting. And even before that, when like Realtree, VHS and DVDs were coming, like it was the same stuff. It was just a different medium. And now it's weird now, because it's like, we're so exposed to it. We're so addicted to our phones. And so we're like not even like consciously checking into this stuff and exposing ourselves to this stuff that we don't really care about, and actually pisses us off, which is a whole part of the plan to get us to look at it more. And it's rough, man. And I honestly think, I talk about sitting in your tree stand fantasizing. When I was muzzleloader hunting earlier this year, I was like, man, what would be really cool is if every trophy photo, so, whoever you are, you're posing with that whitetail buck or that big bull elk, if there was like a breakdown on what it cost. Because,
oh my gosh,
because I saw this post from this hunt that happened out on the Deseret in Utah for elk. And how it is. I know people, that's Rogan's place. That's, Cam hunts there, whatever. And I don't know what they cost now, but a few years ago, that was an $18,000 just tag. I'm sure it's more now.
It's a little more than that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure it's $20,000 to $25,000. And you know how this is, because you're kind of an insider like I am, where you see this stuff and and you go, man, and I don't want to knock that. Like, if people want to go do that, whatever, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, sure.
But if it would change how everyone felt, if you were like, here's a picture of this great buck I killed. Here's my lease is $10,000 a year, and I spent this and this and this, and it was like a breakdown. I think a lot of people would look at this over and over and go, okay, there's like a really common theme with most of these big animals I'm seeing, and there's a lot of money invested in them. A lot of money. And so I think it would kind of level us off a little bit, and you'd go like, I don't get jealous of Jeff Bezos, buying 400-foot yachts. Like, that's such a different world from where I live in. Like, it doesn't affect me. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to get a red ass about a guy who starts a company like that and gets $180 billion and starts a space company. Like, I don't give a shit.
Right.
But like on a smaller scale, you look at some of the money involved in some of this stuff, and it's not that level. It's not Amazon owner level, but it's like so far beyond what most people I think probably realize. And, you know, you look, especially some of the Western stuff, you're just like, that elk has a $25,000 price on his head. Like, if you knew that, you wouldn't be like, you'd be like, okay, this is a different world from me.
Well, and I even think from a self-reflection standpoint, like if you actually, because I hate seeing it, man. Like it's like, and we all see it all the time too. And I really get on my buddy, like personal friends, I really get on their case if they do this, because it really rubs me the wrong way. And it was like, kind of goes back to what I said earlier about the Iowa buck I shot, where I was kind of like, who the heck do you think you are? I was like yelling at myself, and it was like, when, the typical prototypical like trophy photo post goes up on social media, and it always starts with, well, he's not the biggest buck in the woods, or, oh, I know he's not going to score a lot, or what. Like, I'm like, dude, no, to heck with that, man. It's like, if you pulled the trigger on that thing, be happy, be proud, own it. You made a successful hunt. You had it. You made a successful shot recovery. You made it happen. You filled the free. Like, those are the positives so far outweigh anything that somebody else who has no idea, or some keyboard warrior that has an opinion about what your deer scored or how old it was. Like, it drives me absolutely insane. And I think what you're talking about there would actually, if somebody actually sat down and like, okay, how much do I have invested in this deer? And then they listed out the cost. I think the pride in that deer all of a sudden would go way up, where they're like, oh, holy cow, I hope my wife never sees this, but wow, like this is, this is like a whole, it's like, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars that you've got banked into this thing. And it's like, all of a sudden it's going to matter a lot more to you. So I think I love that. I don't know if we need to start our own social media platform where I'll let you run that. I'll let you figure that out.
Yeah. I can tell you there may be a lot of ways my career goes. It's not going to be starting a social media channel.
No, not going that way. Yeah.
No, that's not going to happen. It'll go the other way, if anything. But yeah, I mean, I think it's important to just kind of look at this stuff and be honest about this stuff. And I think it's important to recognize that, like, that's a component of what we have going on. And it kind of feeds into the theme of this, where it's like, if you feel like you're out there getting your ass kicked and everybody else isn't, you're wrong. Like, you're just wrong. I mean, and you and I well know people who are like, they get it done. Like, some of the hunters I respect the most out of anyone still have just clunker seasons.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish, or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
I wanted to ask you this earlier, but I forgot, but I'm going to ask you now. I think so many people, they hit a real slump at some point in the kind of the beginning of their whitetail career somewhere. You know, it might be the first deer, or a lot of times it's that real big step up from okay bucks to something they're like, I want to show this off. Like, did you hit those in stages when you started out, or did you have one where you're like, I cannot bust through this one, I just can't do it?
Oh, dude, did I? Yeah. I bow hunted for 5 years before I killed a deer with a bow. So started in Michigan. You could legally start archery hunting when you were 12, and I was 16 when I shot my first buck with a bow. So I mean, missed, and I was not picky. Like, it was, you know, I grew up with like 4 legs, brown hair, and a white tail. Let her fly. You know, that's kind of where I grew up in. So, I mean, no man land I backstrapped. I don't know. I think 2 bucks, didn't find them, completely, you know, whiffed, missed. I can't even tell you how many does, where I could not control the emotion. Like, I was so amped up on every single thing before it finally happened. And I never will forget it. It was a doe coming in at last light. And finally I'm sitting there, I'm like, you have to kill this thing. Like, you can't let this go on forever. Right. And I spined her, and she was like you know, it was just a nightmare, and ended up putting the finishing shot. So, like, yeah, I mean, and thankfully it got significantly better after that. But, you know, you learn those things to calm yourself down. But yeah, I mean, I was just like anybody else. I mean, I was absolutely enamored, just consuming as much hunting content as I possibly could. The magazines, the VHSs, the DVDs, everything like that from a very early age. And I see these people like shooting these just, you know, unbelievable bucks, and like just and consistently killing these deer. And I just couldn't figure out why I couldn't hit that. And it was eventually what it kind of came to me after I finally, like, okay, I killed my first one. It's like, you can't let the moment be bigger than you, or that, you know, that situation. You've got to control yourself within that situation to be able to effectively execute a shot. And yeah, so talk about a slump. Yeah, I mean, I could drive before I actually finally killed something with a bow.
Dude, I'm right there with you. I started out at 12 too. Minnesota's minimum age was 12, and I killed my first deer, which was a button buck, like 4 days before the season ended when I was 15. So I essentially had 4 full seasons of hunting in before I killed a buck fawn that was the unluckiest deer in the woods. I sprayed and prayed at that buck because he busted me drawn on him, and he was trotting through, and I just shot, and I shot him through the liver. And it was like, I will never forget that deer. You know, I couldn't hear him coming because there was a bunch of fresh snow on the ground. And I looked down, and he was right below me, and I was like, holy shit, there's a deer here. And I drew, and he busted me. And I remember thinking, like, every freaking time you draw, they see you. But, you know, he was dumb. And it just, when that arrow went through him and he ran off and I could see blood in the snow, I was like, oh my God, like, I think I'm actually going to get one. And, you know, I had done, so that year was the first full year I got permission to hunt this farm that I still hunt to this day. And when I walked into that farm, like, seeing a buck for me at that time was like, whoa, like, this is, holy shit. Sure. And I walked in on this hayfield. I'm like, I'm going to go carry a stand in, because that's all I did. I had one stand, carry it in, put it up, take it down, put it up, take it down. And I walked in there, and I jumped a little 1.5-year-old buck. And I remember, like, I am on a spot now. Like, I am on a farm that has these deer. And I started hunting that place every night. My mom would drive me out there and drop me off, and I'd walk into a spot. This looks good. I'd hang a stand, and I would hunt it till I burned it right to the freaking ground. And then I'd keep going through the woods. And I can't remember exactly, but I think I missed like 11 deer that season.
Oh yeah.
I remember I had a week where I missed 3, and it was all little bucks. It was all like, spikes, forkies, basket 6, whatever. And I was just like, I'd call my dad because my dad works second shift at IBM, and he'd be like, "How'd tonight go?" And I'd be like, "Oh, missed another forky, shot at him 3 times." And like, I just remember my dad being like, I guess just keep going out there. Like he was out of advice. Like I'm sure he was like, I think I got to paternity test this kid because this kid's a dipshit. He can't do it. And I mean, so when you talk about that, it took you roughly the same amount of time. You're talking full seasons of hunting, multiple, and not killing a deer. And I don't know about you, but I was 18 when I killed my first buck. And then I killed one every year, actually probably every year since then. I don't think I've had a year where I didn't. But, I got to that point where I was like, okay, the basket racks are like, eventually throughout the season, one of those dudes is going to die. And when I started killing some 2.5-year-olds, and I'm like, you know what? It's time to get some chest hair and like go be a real man out there. That was when the real big second slump of my life hit, where I was like, I was not ready for it. Like, I'm like, I need to kill something that's 3.5-year-old, like you're just whatever, that on up. And I was right back to that stage where I'm like, I can't hit him right. Can't hit him at all. I get an opportunity. I fall apart. And so this stuff is like, you don't get over it. Like, I mean, you get over it to some extent, but there's situations like you lose the farm and you got to start over, or you go try that public land hunt. You put yourself in a different situation, or you move, to the UP from Southern Michigan. And now you're like, this ain't the same world I grew up in. And now you have to start over, and that pressure comes in and that stress, and man, that slump is on you before you know it. And it sucks.
I think it's just, again, perspective and mentality. Because I agree with you 100%. And I truly believe everybody, if they're being honest with themselves and others, is going to go through that, regardless of what their goals are, regardless of where they're hunting, regardless of what's happening. They're going to find that slump. They're going to hit that. It's just going to happen if you do it long enough. And that's where it's like, I think if people can't understand that, or if they're being judgmental or ridiculing somebody because they haven't shot a buck yet, or they haven't filled a tag this year or whatever, especially when they're kind of in the public view of the industry of like, they're creating some type of content or whatever. And it's like, they get accustomed to this consistency. It's like, if they can't understand or respect the slump, if you will, they just haven't been doing it long enough, or they're just being a jerk on social media. It's just, I mean, because it's going to happen to them if it or if they're not even experiencing it right now. So yeah, it's just the reality of it. It's just something that we have to face. I think it's an incredibly good learning tool for us. I mean, I know that as much fun as the great years are, where you're filling tags every time you go, and you hunt 10 days and you fill 3 or 4 tags, and it's like unbelievable. As fun and wonderful as that is, I learn way more from deer, the habitat, how deer are using the terrain, finding new spots, what deer are doing within a certain, based on certain conditions or whatever. From those hard slump years where it's just a constant grind and battle, I learned way more from those years than I do from the years where I fill a bunch of tags. That doesn't mean I don't want the years where I fill a bunch of tags. I'm not saying that, but reflecting back on it and even looking on it, just trying to keep that positive mindset where it's like, hey, this isn't all for nothing here. I'm sharpening the iron, right? I'm making myself better because I'm struggling through this, and there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, and I think another way to do this too, if you find yourself out there, especially maybe not if you're a beginner, but if you're at one of those stages where you're like, I need to level up on this somehow. I'm this caliber buck or whatever. I want 5 does in the freezer at the end of the year instead of 1. And you hit, you hit the wall with it. One of the things that I found totally by accident that really helps me sort of contextualize those moments is like taking my daughters out, or I take a lot of kids out or newbies turkey hunting. Yeah. And man, you take it for granted what you know Like when you walk out into the woods and you're scouting, you have a hell of a lot to draw on. And you go, okay, I see this. I've been here. I've done this. Like I kind of, like I've been here, done this. Like I know how to get myself through this. But when you have to think about bringing somebody else through it, and for me personally, it forces me to like, there's no like errors in my setup. Like, where do you put this blind? How do you brush it in? Like how's the sun going to come in? Where's it going to approach? Or, taking my daughter's deer hunting, like, man, I can't have a squeaky chair. I can't have mistakes because we're gonna make mistakes. So like if I allow something sloppy, or if I'm like, this is good enough, there's no way it's gonna bite us in the ass. And sometimes for me, just taking somebody else who doesn't know what they're doing is like, it kind of just like recalibrates me. And I go, okay, like I needed to see this and to go through this and like understand I don't have it this bad. This pity party that I've been having because I can't kill big bucks. Time to shut it down and move on,
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it teaches me, like I always like doing that from that perspective too, whether it be turkey hunting or even deer hunting. What it teaches me about public a lot is like whether I'm taking a youth or even a buddy that doesn't hunt public a lot or hasn't like gone like doesn't use scouting as a major foundation of their hunting style. And all of a sudden, like that question why comes up, right? Where it's like, hey, why are you looking at this? Or why did you see this away? There was this great scrape or rub and we kind of just walked right by it. Like, why did that happen? Like, and I'm like, because I take it like you. It's like you kind of bet you just like you're either filing it away like subconsciously or like you kind of process it subconsciously and just kind of go right on by it. And it's actually helped me kind of refrain of like, okay, these are important things and they do matter in certain situations, and explaining it to somebody else or, and even it's caused me to even sharpen up on things that I'll glaze over or it might even lead to something really important or pivotal in a given spot that otherwise I just kind of glazed over. And having that reset moment where you're really paying attention to every detail and not missing that small stuff. Again, I've gone through those similar experiences and it turned in very valuable when you're talking about looking at through the eyes of somebody else that maybe doesn't do it every day.
Yep. And I think the important lesson there, if you're on just a cold streak out there, is there are just like so many different ways to address this. And, the industry sort of, it does a really good job of elevating people who sell that Terminator mindset. Right? This is all I do. This is all I care about. This is all I think about. Whitetails 24/7. I got divorced over it, blah, blah, blah. And, there are people, you and I both know people who are actually like that. They're pretty freaking rare.
Oh,
and usually they're assholes, in my opinion. Yeah. Just personally, they kind of seem to be. But that's not the way for most people to do this and enjoy it. Like if you're out there and you're struggling a little bit, finding a way to have more fun in the woods is way better than just being like, I have to be so, dialed in and so like, I got to be scouting constantly every day and I got to be running 5,000 trail cameras. I got to be doing this. Like that might be the answer for like a very, very small percentage of hunters out there. But I think for most people, it's actually like that would hurt them a lot. Like this image that we sell to them.
Man, you said it a million times and I totally agree with you. I've always agreed with this mindset. No one cares what you shoot at the end of the day. No one cares. So do you want to be that guy? Do you want to be that guy with that mentality of like, oh, I don't have time for a girlfriend or a wife and I don't have time for kids because I'm out there because all that's going to end up doing is you're going to be 80 years old in a dusty house with big deer mounts around you, which, okay, cool, but you're by yourself and like, that's it. Like, is that really what you want to like your hunting legacy, whatever that might be to be? I mean, or is it like, deer camp with buddies and learning and spending time out there and doing, like you said, it's like going on a pheasant hunt, going on a deer hunt, turkey hunt. And I'm just like, you're just out there having a great time and filling your freezer and having fun. Like, I mean, everybody can hunt their own hunt and have their own definition of what success is in the deer woods. But I don't know, man. I just have never understood, like, I don't know, the macho-ness of that, of like, I just got to kill the biggest and best and everything be damned, where I'm just, I'll throw everything else to the wayside and lose my job and, get divorced. And I'm just like, at the end of the day, like, what do you say? Like rabbits with antlers. That's what we're out there chasing, man.
Yeah,
like,
we're not curing childhood cancer here.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I got into the couple that owns the motel I stay at when I hunt in southwestern Wisconsin sometimes, her husband is a duck guide down there on the Mississippi River. And when I was down there muzzleloader hunting, they were kind of wrapping up. It was his last couple hunts, whatever. And I was talking to the wife, and she was telling me how they had some people in. I thought she said they came up from Texas or somewhere. They traveled somewhere. And she said when they were checking into the motel, they were talking about how they always do guided hunts for ducks, and they always know more than the guides. And she was like, they were like, we know how to do this. We know how to decoy and call better. And I was like, well, A, if that was true, you wouldn't be hiring guides everywhere.
Why are you going on a guided hunt?
And B, you're like puffing your chest out because you're murdering birds. Like, are we really like that into it that we have to like elevate? You know what I mean? And I get it. Yeah. Like, it's a lifestyle. It's fun, but I just look at that and I go, man, you're kind of delusional here. Like, you should be out there because it's badass to work those mallards in and watch them circle. And it sure is fun to shoot them out of the sky, but it's not like, we're not like working on AI here. We're not going to save the world, like we're taking these little former dinosaurs with tiny little brains who see, who they think are their buddies. They're just plastic pieces of shit in the water. And they're like, hey, I'm going to go down there. And all of a sudden these pricks jump out of a boat and shoot them. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And to your point, man, like, I think there's something to be said there for like related to the slump thing. Like, if you're just running into the brick wall so hard, like this year or whatever, and you're just in this slump, like, that's a really great point of perspective is don't make them smarter than they are, or like they've got some crystal ball and they're all knowing. And don't get me wrong, incredible instincts, and they're intelligent and they're just like unbelievably good at surviving in their element. But they have to eat, they have to sleep, they have to have water. Like, just think even in the realm of that, like you and I get asked all the time, and you and I've had this conversation a lot about like, oh, if I'm on a trip somewhere, I'm traveling, like, how do I find a big buck, or like, how do I find that mature deer? And it's like, well, step one is find deer. Like, identify where deer are congregating for whatever reason. And then you understand that, because 9 times out of 10, in or out of the rut, it doesn't matter. Like, forget the phase, like, of whatever, pre-rut, post, or whatever it is, early season, late season, doesn't matter. If you find deer, you're like halfway there. Now, depending on what your goals are for size and quality and age or whatever, and that'll obviously change the spectrum completely. But finding deer could be the slump buster you need. Is understanding where you're at and figuring out, okay, I just need to go see deer. I need to find the freshest sign and understand why these deer are here, and then go from there.
Yeah, there's such a good point I want to break down in that, because when we say learn to find deer first, like learn how to locate them, I think most people would listen to that and go, well, I know I'm around deer. There's rubs and scrapes and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. Can you walk in there and set up and have a bunch of deer walk past you in bow range?
Right.
Because there's a big difference there, and this is so, I talk about this all the time, but it's like, it becomes so real when you elk hunt. When you go to that over-the-counter unit in Colorado and you're like, now I have this huge landscape and I need to get around them, and they're a low-density animal and they're going to be concentrated in a few spots, you just realize how worthless anything but the freshest sign actually is. And even then, are they still there? Like, and we don't think about whitetails that way, because we're like, oh, whitetails live here. And it's like, man, you probably don't own a whole section, right? Like, you're probably not hunting that buck's entire home range, or those deer, right. Like, they might not live there, or you might push them out real fast. Like, so when we say get on deer, it's not just like, don't look around and be like, well, there's deer tracks in the mud, there's a rub over there. Like, okay. Like, can you get an actual live deer to walk by you consistently? That's a big difference.
Huge. And it can teach you so much about how they're, like, again, you and then work that back. Right. So it's like that happens, and then start asking, like, why is that deer there? Why are they moving in this, like, from this direction to this direction? And are they browsing as they go? Or they work it like they're on like a destination where they're just kind of marching through, or what's their behavior? Where they, and then it's like, okay, you take it and look at it from like a map perspective, or like get on e-scouting, and then you start breaking down, okay, like, what if I move or just physically boots on the ground scouting. Like you might have those deer come through. It might not be a deer you shoot, or maybe they're too far away or whatever. And then you start like working that back and trying to figure it out. Like, to me, like that is how you uncomplicate the situation of finding like a good buck or something you want to shoot, and B, breaking yourself out of the slump. It's like just moving into that spot where, okay, I'm around deer now. This isn't the spot, but I found the area, and now I need to find the spot within the spot. Right. Yep. And it's like, once you can start breaking it down that way, I mean, to me, like, I think that's, you get, don't get all Mark Kenyon on it, where like you're charting numbers and like per hour. I'm just like, dude, I was texting him the other day, and I was just like, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he's just like, oh, I'm figuring this out. I'm like, okay, man, like you do you, buddy. And I'm just like loving it. But anyway, like, so we don't all need to, we could actually have a whole entire podcast about what's going on with Mark, but But finding that spot within the spot, working that back, like, to me, that's the kind of stuff that breaks slumps up. Like, that's the stuff that you can then, again, you're not forcefully trying to make something happen, but you're taking steps to work with the deer, right? And it's not trying to like ram your way into them. I think that can work. Yeah,
you're not going through the motions. You're actually still trying to figure something out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It's so important, buddy. We are out of time. People can find your writing, Meat Eater / Wired to Hunt. You're doing a bunch of articles for us there. What else are you doing out there?
Oh, I guess you can follow Instagram and Facebook. I don't post very much, but I'm trying to figure out.
But you posted a picture of that big Iowa buck.
I did. It was a little late, but I did finally get something up there. I
got to do it.
So, yeah, got to do it. So yeah, I mean, just Alex Gyllstrom, at Alex Gyllstrom, Facebook, Instagram, and then like I said, I write a bunch for Meat Eater, you guys over there, and love doing that. So that's the best place to find the stuff.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, buddy. Good luck with that baby that's coming up here. Thanks for everything, man.
I appreciate it, buddy.
That's it for this week, folks. Be sure to tune in next week for more whitetail goodness. This has been the Wired to Hunt podcast, and I'm your guest host, Tony Peterson. As always, thank you so much for listening. And if you're looking for more whitetail content, be sure to check out themeateater.com/wired to see a pile of new articles each week by Mark, Alex, who's the guest on this show, myself, and a whole slew of whitetail addicts. Or you can head on over to the Wired to Hunt YouTube channel to view the weekly content we drop.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.